It was supposed to be a simple dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a Friday evening gathering at a popular restaurant downtown with some of my husband's closest friends. My husband, Ethan, had been looking forward to it all week. "Come on, Ava," he said with a smile while adjusting his tie. "Everyone's excited to finally meet you." I laughed. "Finally? We've been married for 8 months. Yeah, but work schedules, business trips, life, you know how it is." I nodded. The truth was, I hadn't met many of Ethan's college friends. Most lived in different states, and tonight was the first time many of them had gathered in years. I wanted to make a good impression. I spent extra time choosing a dress, not too flashy, not too casual. Just elegant, comfortable, me. When we arrived, the private dining room buzzed with laughter and conversation. People greeted Ethan warmly. Handshakes, back slaps, hugs. Everyone seemed friendly. Everyone except one man, Jordan. The moment I saw him, I understood why Ethan had described him as the loudest guy in every room. Jordan wasn't necessarily bad-looking. He was confident, maybe too confident, the kind of person who mistook volume for intelligence. He dominated every conversation, interrupted everyone, laughed at his own jokes, and somehow managed to make every topic about himself. When Ethan introduced me, Jordan looked me up and down. Not openly rude, but enough to make me uncomfortable. "Well," he said, "Ethan definitely married up." A few people laughed awkwardly. I forced a smile. "Nice to meet you too." The evening continued. At first, everything seemed fine. Then Jordan started making comments. Small comments. The kind people dismiss because they're disguised as jokes. "So Ava, what do you do all day?" "I run a consulting firm." "Oh," he grinned. "Like a real consulting firm or one of those Instagram businesses?" Several people shifted uncomfortably. I smiled politely. "A real one." "Wow." He raised his eyebrows dramatically. "Didn't expect that." I noticed Ethan tense beside me. But I gently touched his arm. "Not yet." The dinner moved on. Or at least I hoped it would. Unfortunately, Jordan was only getting started. An hour later, everyone was discussing careers. One guest talked about medicine. Another worked in technology. Someone else managed a nonprofit organization. Then Jordan turned toward me. "What's the biggest company you've worked with?" I answered honestly. "A Fortune 500 logistics company." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Sure." The table went silent. "What?" I asked calmly. "Nothing." Jordan smirked. "It's just hard to imagine." "Why?" His grin widened. "You seem more like someone who runs Pinterest boards." A couple people gasped. One woman looked horrified. Even Ethan's friend Marcus muttered, "Dude." But Jordan wasn't done. "You know what I mean." He shrugged. "Some people are built for business." Then he looked directly at me. "And some people just look good in business photos." The room became painfully quiet. Every eye moved toward Ethan. I could see anger flashing across his face. But before he spoke, I placed my hand on his knee. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Curious how far Jordan would go. "Interesting," I said. "What?" "Nothing." I smiled. "I'm just wondering why you're so interested in proving I'm less successful than you." Several people suddenly looked down at their drinks. Jordan laughed loudly. "Trust me. That's not difficult." The insult landed hard. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Ethan stood. The room froze. Jordan's grin faded slightly. Ethan rarely raised his voice, which made it far more powerful when he did. Jordan. The single word cut through the room. Yeah, you owe my wife an apology. Jordan rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. No. Ethan's tone remained calm. You've been disrespectful all night. I was joking. No one is laughing. Jordan glanced around. Nobody smiled. Nobody agreed with him. For the first time all evening, he seemed uncertain. But instead of apologizing, he doubled down. Seriously. He looked at me. She can't take a joke. I finally spoke. I can. Then what's the problem? The problem, I said quietly, is that jokes are supposed to be funny. Several people tried to hide smiles. Jordan's face reddened. For the first time, someone had challenged him directly. And he didn't like it. Not one bit. What happened next would completely change the evening. Because Jordan was about to discover something nobody at that table knew. Something that would turn his confidence into embarrassment. And teach him a lesson about respect he'd never forget. The room remained silent. Jordan leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. You know what? He said. Fine. Let's drop it. But the smug smile on his face told everyone he wasn't sorry. Not even close. The waiter arrived with the main course, giving everyone an excuse to focus on something else. Conversations slowly restarted. People talked about vacations, sports, work projects, anything to escape the tension. I thought the evening might finally settle down. I was wrong. About 20 minutes later, Marcus mentioned a major logistics company that had recently signed a nationwide expansion deal. Immediately, Jordan jumped into the conversation. Oh, I know about that deal, he said proudly. Really? Marcus asked. Of course. My company tried to compete for that contract. I quietly sipped my water. Jordan continued talking. Unfortunately, the consulting team advising them made terrible recommendations. I nearly laughed, because I knew exactly which deal he was talking about. And I knew exactly who had led the consulting team. Me. Jordan shook his head dramatically. Millions of dollars involved, and somehow those consultants still got hired. Ethan looked at me. A tiny smile appeared on his face. He knew. He knew where this was going. Marcus looked curious. Do you know which consulting firm handled it? Jordan nodded. Yeah, but honestly they were probably chosen because someone had connections. That was enough. I set down my fork. Actually, I said calmly, that project increased efficiency by 23% during the first year. Jordan blinked. How would you know? Because I designed the strategy. The table froze. Jordan laughed. Sure. I reached into my purse. Not dramatically. Not to show off. Simply because I happened to have my business card. I slid it across the table. Jordan picked it up. His smile slowly disappeared. Then disappeared completely. His eyes widened. He looked down again. Then again. The card clearly displayed my name. Beneath it was my title. The consulting company wasn't large when I started it. But over the years it had grown into one of the most respected firms in our region. Several people around the table immediately recognized the company name. Marcus nearly choked on his drink. Wait. He looked at me. You own that company? I nodded. A woman across the table stared at me. Your firm handled our corporate restructuring last year. That's right. Oh my God. Suddenly several people began connecting the dots. Projects, contracts, articles they'd read, business conferences they'd attended. Jordan remained completely silent. For once, nobody had ever seen him speechless. Finally he cleared his throat. There must be some mistake. There isn't. I smiled politely. I started the company 11 years ago. Jordan looked stunned. 11 years. Yes. But, he stopped himself. But what? He swallowed. Nothing. No, everyone knew exactly what he wanted to say. But you don't look like a CEO. But you're too friendly, too calm, too feminine, too normal. All the assumptions he'd made throughout the evening were suddenly crashing down around him. And everyone could see it. The conversation shifted. People started asking questions. Not because they were impressed by money, but because they were genuinely interested. How had I started the company? What challenges had I faced? How had I built a team? I answered honestly. I talked about failures, long nights, financial risks, mistakes, lessons, the reality behind success. Jordan sat quietly through all of it, watching, listening, for the first time all evening. As the discussion continued, Marcus suddenly laughed. Jordan looked up. Yeah, you spent 2 hours explaining business to someone who's probably forgotten more about business than you'll ever know. The table erupted in laughter. Even Jordan forced an embarrassed smile. Okay. He rubbed his forehead. I probably deserved that. Probably. Marcus teased. More laughter. Jordan shook his head. Fine. Definitely. About 30 minutes later, dessert arrived. The atmosphere felt completely different. Lighter. Warmer. Then something unexpected happened. Jordan stood up. Everyone looked at him. I need to say something. The room became quiet. He looked directly at me. And for the first time all night, there was no arrogance. No sarcasm. No performance. Just honesty. Ava, I owe you an apology. Nobody interrupted. I judged you before I knew anything about you. He sighed. And honestly, I kept doing it because I thought I was the smartest person in the room. A few people chuckled. Jordan nodded. Yeah, I know. Then he looked at me again. I was rude, disrespectful, and completely wrong. The sincerity surprised everyone, including me. You didn't deserve any of that. I studied him for a moment, then smiled. Thank you. The tension finally broke. Jordan sat down, and for the first time that evening, the conversation felt genuine. Later that night, after everyone left, Ethan and I walked toward the parking lot. The cool evening air felt refreshing. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. You handled that better than I would have. I laughed. That's why one of us is calm. Definitely not me. We reached the car. Before getting inside, Ethan stopped. What? He smiled. You know what made me proud tonight? The apology? No. The business card? Definitely not. I raised an eyebrow. Then what? He squeezed my hand. You never tried to humiliate him back. I thought about that. Jordan had embarrassed himself. I didn't need to help. Respect wasn't about proving someone else was smaller. It was about refusing to become smaller yourself. And sometimes the strongest response isn't revenge. It's dignity. As we drove home, I glanced out the window and smiled. Jordan had learned something important that night. Success doesn't always look the way people expect. And the loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest. Sometimes the strongest person is simply the one who knows their worth, and doesn't need to announce it.